Hello and welcome to Living with Romanian and Overseas Rescue Dogs video podcast series. My name is Mish Masters of The Dog's Point of View, and I specialise in working with adopters of foreign rescue dogs. During this video podcast series, I'm going to be chatting to adopters who will share their unique journeys with the dogs they've adopted, as well as talking to some canine professionals who are going to share their experiences of working with these amazing natural world dogs. You can find all the recordings of the podcast series over on the Dog's Point of View YouTube channel, as well as on the main website, where there are also free resources, workshops and online courses created specifically for adopters of Romanian and overseas rescue dogs. I hope you enjoy the video podcast series and find it interesting and perhaps helpful for living your best life with your dogs. Thanks for joining me. Bye for now. We're away. Okay, so hello to Joe this morning on our video podcast, who has very kindly agreed to come along and have a chat with me about Womble and Munchkin, who are aka Alice and Sky. We don't really call them by their normal names though, do we, Joe?
Never, no. Only when they're their Sunday names when they're in trouble.
Yeah, they've been naughty.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you for coming along and having a chat with me about your beautiful girls and your lives together so far. Really looking forward to chatting to you. As you know, these girls are my favourites. So let's just kick off first and tell us how long they've been with you. And then
Womble, oh goodness, she's been with me 4.5 years now, about.
time flies.
I always forget. I still think she's 2.5. I forget she's been here quite a while. And Munchkin has been with me 2.5 years. She'll have been here 3 years in September. So yeah, quite
Amazing.
a while.
Yeah, it's time flies, doesn't it? It really
Yeah.
does. So
Yeah.
let's just have a look at this first picture we've got, because I believe this does kind of lead us into how you came to adopt a Romanian dog. So tell us about this picture.
I never intended to adopt a Romanian dog. I never went out to look at one, and I still to this day never sort of thought I'm going to adopt a Romanian dog. I didn't know that much about them. So Fletch, who is the little grey-faced staffy on there, it was my old dog. He was foster fail. I'm the worst fosterer in the world. So I used to help out at a local dog rescue, and I fostered for them. And I fostered Fletch and kept him. Was a gorgeous, steady fella. And they were affiliated with somebody who used to bring in Romanian dogs. And if there were issues with them or they hadn't got homes to go to, they kind of ended up in our kennels. So Annie, the very, very gorgeous girl sat next to him, was my first ever experience of a Romanian dog. She was an older girl who had huge spinal problems. So her back didn't move. She'd got really bad spinal spondylosis. And so she came into the kennel, and because she didn't flex, the kennel was just not big enough for her.
Yeah.
And we'd already been fostering. Fletch was really good with other dogs, so I agreed to take her. And Fletch adored her. They adored each other. And she did really, really well. We got walking, and they used to just play. But unfortunately, due to her health needs, her time here was very short. She sort of had to be put to sleep sort of about 3 months after coming here. Her back just became too painful. So then I was looking to foster again from there, after we lost the gorgeous Annie.
At least she had that wonderful time with you and Fletch, though. She wasn't stuck in a kennel and
Oh no, she had but we got out onto the peaks. She really explored. It took ages to get her on a lead. And I didn't know what I know now at all. But her and Fletch played like puppies continuously when they were in the house. They threw themselves all over the place. You wouldn't have believed her back was so bad.
Yeah.
And they just adored each other. So she had a good time, if it was a short time.
Yeah. Bless her heart. Bless her.
So then Yeah. When
So
we lost her,
then
we then opened up to fostering again.
along came Alice.
Yes.
This is obviously pictures of Alice from when she was in Romania.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Very different to what she looks like now.
very. And I didn't actually see those photos until she'd been here for about a year. And then
Mm.
somebody found them and sent them me.
Ah, really?
Yeah. So I'd never seen those.
No, bless her
Um,
heart. But this is her, I believe, on her first day with you
yes. So the
on the left
one
here.
on the left, that's her first day. So she appeared in our rescue. And I had other fosters since Annie had gone on to be adopted, and then Alice appeared. Um, and I'd suddenly become the person who was quite good with Romanian dogs, which I'm not sure, because I'd had one and she'd settled really well. And Alice had just come into kennels, and they said, would I be interested in fostering her? So I said I would,
Yeah,
because I knew Fletch had a thing for the foreign ladies.
yeah.
So she came here, and it was quite evident quite quickly that she was bleeding really heavily, and it turned out she had cancerous tumours, sort of vaginal cervical cancerous tumours that had got so big they were sort of bleeding. So we thought she was in season, but she had
Mhm.
been spayed, and um, so quite quickly we were launched into massive surgery, which is the middle picture.
Yeah.
Um, when she'd gone for surgery, and her best mate Fletch, she absolutely adored him.
Mm.
And he went to the vets with her. He took her everywhere so that she felt brave enough to go, because we didn't have time to do any of that sort of getting used to
Mm.
stuff. She had to go for surgery very quickly.
She was quite a fearful girl when she arrived, wasn't she?
Yeah, very fearful. She didn't like it being inside. She didn't really understand being in a house. She liked to be in the garden. And the reason she came in the house was she followed Fletch. So we had a bit of a he followed me and she followed him. So generally, if I was sat anywhere, Fletch would be sat next to me and she'd be sat the other side next to Fletch. So it always looks on photos like she was quite brave initially because she's on the sofa and what have you. But actually it was just because Fletch was there. She'd
Yes.
go anywhere that he went. But
Yeah.
yeah, she was very fearful. But fortunately for the vet and for us probably, but maybe not so for her, now I know more, is her mode of fear was freezing. So when she was scared, she would just freeze. And so she had internals, ultrasounds, all sorts of things without even needing any sort of sedation, because she would just let them do it.
Mm.
Um, and we were very lucky that the vet that saw it is a very gentle person, and
Mm.
she actually would go with him quite happily, because it was in lockdown, so that was also difficult,
Yes.
because she had to go in on her own.
Yeah.
But she got through the surgery really well. She then had a course of chemotherapy. Um,
Such a lot to go through, bless her.
I mean, within a couple of months of arriving in the country, it's masses to go through, isn't it? It's absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Because it was car journeys to the vets. It was going in, being in the vets for 45 minutes while she had the chemotherapy infusion,
Mm.
feeling really sick because of that, having the anti-sickness medication, then having to get in the car and come back home. She hates, and still to this day struggles with, doorways and confined spaces. So we had the struggle of getting in and out of the house for all of these appointments.
Yeah.
Um,
Bless her
and
heart.
because they felt she'd had the tumours for quite a long time, and she's an impeccably clean, floofy creature,
Mm.
um, she licked herself an awful lot because she'd been bleeding so heavily. So we had no option but to use the cone.
Yeah.
Because they said in surgery, as soon as she kind of woke up one eyelid, she was trying to lick herself.
Mm.
Um, so she had to wear this huge, horrible cone, and it was massive.
But she
So then
came
we had,
out the other side, didn't
she
she?
did,
And started to settle with you with the amazing Fletcher's wonderful support.
yeah. So that's her hidden in the garden. The garden was her place. That's where she wanted to be.
Yeah.
So she'd spend a lot of time in the garden. Unfortunately, it's very enclosed, so she could come in under her own steam. So
Yeah.
that worked quite well. And we started walking to the park and the local area. And she, was quite social with other dogs. She quite likes other dogs in her own way.
Yeah.
So very
On
steady
her own terms.
on her own terms. Yeah, everything's on Womble's terms. Her terms are very strong, and we do what she says. We were very lucky looking back and knowing what I do now. It was lockdown when I got her, which is why I ended up adopting her, because she stayed with me for months.
Yes.
And by then I couldn't let her go anywhere, and she'd settled. But it just meant everywhere was quiet. There was no traffic.
Yes.
When we went out for a walk, there was nobody about because I was working at the time. So we walked early and late, so everybody else was back in their houses. So knowing what I know now, that kind of really, really helped her, I think, the fact that we had those sort of 3 or 4 months where it was so quiet everywhere.
Yeah.
So she started
I felt
exploring
it was quite
quickly.
nice as well, to be fair.
Yeah.
And then sadly, obviously, you lost the wonderful Fletch, which I know
Yes.
was a massive blow for both of you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I suppose Alice had been with us about 9 or 10 months when Fletch died very suddenly. And we both grieved,
Absolutely.
But she grieved and really struggled. She took to the sofa and didn't get off. She didn't want to eat. She actually, at that point, she became much closer to me. So she'd come and sit with me, because we were sharing that grief.
Yeah.
So our bond became closer. But she really, really struggled without that guidance, without somebody to give her some support.
That canine support.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it was not long after that, maybe, that you came and joined the coaching group.
Yes, I'd done some work with a local behaviourist.
Yeah, the wonderful Victoria Cooper.
Yeah, because like I say, it was lockdown, so Alice was going out and walking, and she'd had all that awfulness where she'd had to go out. So we'd managed, she sort of got used to the lead and the collar and everything and the harness quite quickly. But she's exceptionally head shy and can't cope with anything around her head or her neck. And I worked with Victoria because she'd follow Fletch, so you could sort of almost let her off and she would come back to you, but she wouldn't let you put a lead back on. So we worked on that, and it was Victoria who sort of pointed me in your direction, because we'd started with the Romy plant by that stage.
Of which she is an expert.
Yeah. And Victoria said, Misha's your person for those Romanian traits.
Yes. So then enter little Miss Munchkin.
Yes, the little bombshell that is Munchkin.
Tell us how Skye came to come and be with you and Alice.
I knew Alice needed another dog pal after losing Fletch. And I also knew that probably fostering and having dogs that came and went wouldn't work for her, because she'd struggle so much when he went. So it was nearly a year actually before Skye came along. It was just me and Alice for quite a while. And then the little Munchkin reappeared in the same kennels. And she had come over as a young puppy and been adopted out quite successfully and lived in a family for 4 years. But she doesn't like little children, and they'd gone on to have children, and there'd been a bite incident. So the family, had to return her. They were very upset about it all. So again, I got the phone call saying, You're quite good with Rommies, aren't you, Jo?" And with this little dog that's been in a home for 4 years, and we don't really want to put her back in a kennel. And they also knew that I'd got to the stage where I felt I could bring another dog in the house. It had taken me quite a while.
Of course, yeah.
So she came bounding in one September day. But she doesn't look like that now, does she? Because they used to cut her coat. So yes. I didn't realise till I looked back, and she's a lot less floofy than the Munchkin is today.
But unfortunately, she came with health issues as well, didn't she?
Yes. she had,
And it was quite soon, wasn't it, after she arrived with you?
yeah, she'd already had one cruciate ligament done a year previously, and there was this sort of on-off diagnosis of potential hip dysplasia, but she wasn't on any medication for anything at that point. And then within 24 hours of being here, her other cruciate ligament snapped, and snapped in a big way. She doesn't do pain very well.
No, bless her.
So, she did not put her foot to the floor from the moment it went pop.
Yeah.
So yeah, she'd been in the house less than 48 hours, and her cruciate ligament went. So that caused a few issues.
Yes. Did indeed. Bless her little heart. And here we have, bless her, look, another cone of shame.
Another
And
cone of shame.
the gated community.
Yeah.
Tell us about what happened.
She snapped a cruciate ligament and she was obviously in discomfort. And it turns out that the Munchkin doesn't cope with discomfort very well. And Womble has a very sensitive tummy, so we always have bouts where her tummy can be a little bit off. And all of a sudden, two dogs that for 24 hours we'd been managing and they'd been seeming to get on quite happily, and they'd played in the garden and, had a little walk. Sky turned on Womble in a big way, and we had snarling and aggression, and it would have been a full-on fight if I hadn't managed to sort of get in and separate them.
Yeah.
Alice then developed horrendous diarrhea, which I wasn't sure whether it was the stress of Munchkin or whether it was just her tummy being upset anyway. But Munchkin couldn't bear the sight of her. If she saw her, then she would work herself into a huge frenzy. So I very panically sent
incredibly
messages
stressful
to me.
For you, wasn't it?
Yeah. I live in a
remember the
house.
conversations well. And I remember the "what have I done" conversations, which I know, from all different group members, clients that I've worked with, it's a question that comes up a lot. What have I done? But yeah, so we put the management in place, didn't we, for you?
Yeah, we put all the gates in. That night I'd got to get Alice out of the house because she'd got diarrhea and she needed to get to the garden. Munchkin was in the kitchen and it was just horrendous. I really, really did think, what have I done? It's a tiny house. But we put the gates in. For a while, actually, those pictures they used to have blankets over them, so they couldn't actually see each other.
Yeah.
And because Munchkin wasn't allowed to move too far anyway, and wasn't allowed to jump onto things, it wasn't as bad as it could have been because she was quite happy to be quite contained.
Yeah.
And Womble is the most zen, gentle creature in the world with the most amazing dog communication. So she will always try and remove herself or pacify it. It would take a lot for her to want to come back, I think.
Yeah.
So that helped.
We have a hashtag in the group, don't we? Be more Womble.
Yeah.
She's just, she's the beautiful zen character.
Yeah, even now, because like Munchkin does have that kind of slightly feistier, reactive side to her, and she'll guard. And if she's found something that she's guarding and I've missed it, if she starts barking at Womble because Womble's coming towards the sofa, then Womble will get on the sofa bottom first. So as if to say, her communication's phenomenal. It really is.
But you stuck with it.
We did.
And as you said, the gates were up for quite a while, weren't they? Because Munchkin is also a bit of a resource guarder, isn't she?
Yeah.
She had resource guarding tendencies. So I know the gates were up for quite a while and you navigated all of that.
And we do very occasionally have to reinstate them.
Yes.
Very rarely, but very occasionally, just to give everybody a bit of a break.
Well, the thing is,
if Womble's unwell,
that's what I was going to say. Things happen in life, don't they? It's never this one and done approach when you're dealing with people or dogs. ultimately, things happen. Dogs feel unwell, which can make them grumpy, grouchy, snappy in the same way that it does with us. And there never is this, everything is now hunky-dory and will be therefore, forevermore. It's always going to be up and down when you're dealing with relationships ultimately. So yeah, it's great that I love that you put the management, back in place as necessary. And I know that you are much more kind of ahead of the game these days, if you like, in terms of, I know that I might need to do this. And you're always very prepared. I know the conversations we had when you went on holiday. It's like, right, what do I need to do? How do I need to do it? What's the best way? This is the layout. And you were all very prepared, very proactive, which I love because it's very easy to put those measures in place, even if you don't use them. But the fallout of things going wrong can take such a long time to come back from. That proactive approach can be just so valuable in preventing issues from happening in the first place, not just between dogs, but in all different scenarios. And I find that to be, such a valuable mentality to have. Let's be prepared. Let's be proactive, even if we don't need it. It just prevents the problems coming out in the first place, which makes it easier then to work through them if they do come up.
We have sets of gates at my parents' house and different places we go. So I've bought them and left them at people's house. And if I can't leave them, that set fold up and go in the back of my car.
Yeah.
So when I'm going somewhere where there's going to be more people or whatever, we have gates because they don't like shut doors.
No.
So they don't like to be shut in a room because I don't have my doors shut. But if I need to put them in a safe room and gate it, they're quite happy.
Yeah. Excellent. But they got through all of that.
They did.
And they are, for the most part, best of friends these days, aren't they?
They are, yes, they are definitely
They're a right little
team.
pair, I think, is my favorite. They're so different as well. But I love watching all your videos and pictures of them. They're such wonderful characters. So
Yeah.
here, obviously, they're having a good old play. I love Sky's face in this picture.
Yeah, she's definitely the torment. They are very, very different personalities, but they are a team and they both have quite a lot of fear and quite a lot of anxieties. And Womble is hugely zen, but her fear is just below the surface.
Yeah.
And she outside she's very confident and more happy. And inside she finds life difficult. Whereas Munchkin is much more fearful outside than she is inside. So they kind of complement each other a little bit in that way. They offer each other sort of support.
Yeah. Yeah. They make a
They
good
are the yin and yang. I know when they curl up, they look like a black and white yin and yang, and they are a bit like that.
We've got that picture coming up. And obviously you support them massively in terms of where you go with them and in terms of controlling exposures at different times as per what they need. Sometimes I know from our conversations in the group, which obviously you're still in there with us, you can take them to the coffee. You've got your PPP around sitting and having a coffee, and they will settle down in that environment while you have a coffee and a piece of cake. And then on other days, you take them off into the woods, which they both love. And just, get away from the world.
Yeah. We have I live quite a quiet life, which they like. They don't like busyness. And they love the woods. We do loads and loads of like the Romy parkour stuff. It really helps with their confidence and connection with me.
Absolutely. I love it.
And
They're
so
always up on things, aren't they? We've got
yeah,
tons of pictures we could have shared of them up on trees.
up on stuff, yeah. And the cafe we go to is in the woods.
Yeah.
So they love that one. So that's where we go. I don't try and take them to different cafes and lots of different places. We just have our sort of couple of set places
That they're familiar with and
yeah.
comfortable with.
And then they're happy and confident. But if you put them in a park full of people, you would see two very different dogs.
Yeah. But they also have been on 2 or 3 holidays with you now, haven't they?
Yes. So we escaped from fireworks. We don't like fireworks in our house.
No, we don't.
So we went to Wales, and they just had a ball. They adored it. Again, November, the beaches in Wales are pretty quiet. So it was just ideal for them. They absolutely loved it, and they coped so well. I was quite worried about taking two dogs on my own on holiday. But they just had a ball. They really enjoyed it.
And they've met up with your friend and her border collie, is it as well?
Yes.
Quite a few
Yeah.
times. You've
Yeah.
been, she's been to stay with you, and you've met up
Yes.
with her, haven't you?
Yeah. Peg's the only dog that's been to stay in the house. And we did a lot of scent sharing before she
That's
came.
it. Yep.
Um, so they would get to know, we did all the walk and everything before she came in the house, and that works quite well.
Yeah.
One of the reasons it works better than when I've tried with family dogs is Peg's a border collie who's really well behaved. And so if you tell her not to get on the furniture, she doesn't get on the furniture.
Yeah.
So when Munchkin feels like she needs some space, she gets on the sofa and she knows that the dog's not going to come and get on next to her. And my brother's dogs aren't like that. So she doesn't cope when they try and get on the sofa with her. But yeah, Peg's sort of so well behaved that Munchkin's got her safe space that she can get in and she knows she's going to be okay. So
Yeah.
now they get on pretty well. They're really quite good together.
Yeah. Amazing. And then we've just got these are obviously more recent ones. I love
Yeah,
that one of them on the sofa together. That's just beautiful.
I know. If you'd have told me
When she
when
arrived.
Munchkin first arrived that we would ever get to something like that, then I would never have believed anybody. It was the first time they played together was probably, I think it was the Christmas as she'd arrived in the September and we'd done all the management. So, for a few months, not that long, but it felt a long time. And,
Yes. Well, she
and
had the
then,
surgery and everything for you all to navigate as well. So
yeah,
yeah.
and then that Christmas, they just kind of suddenly played with each other, and it was like, oh my goodness. Um, but yeah, they spend quite a lot of time sort of lay together on the sofa now.
Yeah.
And I never thought we'd achieve that. It's so nice to know they do like their own space, and Womble takes herself upstairs quite a bit if she wants space away. But they've just got that nice balance, I always think.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're actually okay as well, because I know obviously in the winter, Sky struggles with going out in the dark, doesn't she? She finds
Yes.
that, she
Yeah.
has a lot of anxiety around that. But Womble, these are all typical Rummy traits. I mean, some dogs, I know with the fearful dogs, they are better going out in the dark, and some are better going out in daylight only. So, they're all different in what they can cope with or are able to cope with. But I know that Womble doesn't like to toilet in the garden, does she?
Not at all, no.
I've got one of those myself, and I know again that can be a common Rummy thing. So you do have to take Womble out for a walk, but we need to leave Munchkin at home, don't we? But
Yeah.
they're okay with that.
Yeah, they're both quite happily to be left at home on their own.
Yeah, which is amazing as well, given that obviously the attachment now between them.
Yeah. Munchkin is less happy to go for a walk without Womble. She won't go very far without her.
Yeah,
But she's more than happy to be at home without her.
yeah,
And equally, if I take Munch, because she is now on quite a lot of treatment for her legs, so she's on quite a lot of pain relief. She has got hip dysplasia. She has had both knees operated on,
yeah.
and she's also not the best shape, so her back's a bit creaky.
Little legs, big body.
Little legs, big body. So she has vet appointments and physio appointments and things like that. So,
Yeah,
she goes out and we leave Womble at home, and she's more than happy. They're very good at that.
yeah. I love this picture of them on the moors. That's just
That was
beautiful.
the other night. We
I know
haven't been up on the
Womble's
moors
face.
for ages because it was so wet, and Womble rolls everywhere she goes, but she was just so happy to be up there because
Yeah,
they just love to run.
yeah. Oh, I
Um,
can relate. I used to when I lived, as I say, when I lived up north, the moors were my happy place, my peaceful place, my rejuvenating place. I loved it up there.
Yeah, and if you pick your place and your time, you can walk and not meet anybody or
Yeah,
any dogs or anything. So,
yeah.
the space is
Sheep,
great.
maybe. We
Yeah,
bumped into sheep quite a lot.
yeah. They're pretty tough, the sheep up there, though, aren't they? They don't run. And these
No,
two,
we
if
had
things
one
don't
chase
run
us
from
when we
them,
were
they're
up
not.
there.
Hmm?
We had one chase us when we were up there.
They're really tough, the sheep up here. But they're again, we've done some work around the sheep and they're not bad.
Yeah.
As long as they don't run, squirrels. Squirrels is Munchkin's thing. She loves to
Squirrels is
chase
a
a
lot of
squirrel.
dogs' thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you could, I mean, by any standards, you've not had an easy time with either of them, what with one thing and another in terms of health issues and obviously navigating through fears and anxieties and stuff like that. Um, do you have any regrets around adopting a foreign rescue dog?
No, they're amazing dogs. They're amazing, soulful dogs, and we have the most amazing bond.
You
Um,
absolutely do.
that I never thought I would get with another dog after I'd had my little Toady Fletch.
Mm.
Um, but we have the most amazing bond. And Womble, she virtually speaks. She's such a so no, I don't have any regrets. I really love them and I really love the dogginess of them. I love that,
Mm.
we spend hours just me sat on a tree in the woods and they dig and play and just do dog things.
Yeah,
And I adore having dogs that are dogs.
yeah.
But it's not easy.
No,
Um,
no. But there is definitely a depth to them, isn't there? And
yes.
I feel like, I mean, I'm what am I? Well, I'm 9 years in to kind of when I first got involved with the Romanian dogs, when I first obviously Merlin came as a foster, and obviously Tramp's been with me for 8.5 years. And yet still I feel like he is teaching me something every day. There's
Yeah.
still stuff that is there to be learned. And I find these dogs are just incredible teachers of, that real doggy nature, natural doggy nature, if you like. And I think for me, that's a big difference between them and the British dogs, and why I don't. I love all dogs, it's not that I don't love British dogs at all. I mean, I have my own one, obviously. But that depth, I don't know, that there's just always something they've got to teach, which I find is just the most wonderful experience in terms of, for me as a trainer, that learning piece, shall we say.
Yeah. They're just absolutely fascinating and I
Yeah,
can
they
watch
really
them. I
are.
can watch them for hours. And it always amazes me. Like people will say, yeah, but they don't do normal dog stuff. And I do. I always say, well, everything they do is actually a dog thing.
Yeah.
What your pet dog does, your UK pet dog does, are human activities.
More
And my
so, yeah.
my two don't want to do human things, they
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
they want to do dog things.
Yeah, yeah.
Um and I love that about them.
Yeah,
That,
absolutely. Absolutely.
they don't need, they just need a tree and a stream and and they're so
And a
happy.
squirrel.
And a squirrel and they're so happy. When I say it's difficult, the challenge I think it is they are although they are a team and they're great, they both have very opposite challenges. And
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
being one person looking after them, sometimes it can feel a bit like there's not enough of me.
Yeah. But then again, I think that can be true as one person with multiple dogs
Yeah,
anyway, if
yeah,
you
I'm
see what I
sure.
mean.
I'm
But
sure.
I know that they are very different characters, and as you know, my two are very different characters, even though she's obviously British. They're both very different in terms of how they are. Um, but I think, watching you over the last 3 years, is it?
Yeah,
And how you've all just grown so wonderfully together. Um, it's been an absolute pleasure, to be able to help you navigate through with both of them and their different, the different needs, shall we say.
yeah. I
It
mean,
has been.
they are amazing dogs. They're just just for, I mean, the time when we had to go to the vets the other week, and Womble's done so much vets. But we used to have to carry her in through the door because she still doesn't really like doorways, and we still have
Mm.
a few challenges about that, but not as many. And she just walked straight in, and I was like, oh. But I've taken her a lot just to weigh her and try and get her used to that. And she
Yeah.
walked in, and I'm booking her in at the reception, turned round, and she'd gone and stood on the scales. And
I love.
she would never ever have done that, but it was almost, like that PPP is you come in, you get on the scales and you get weighed.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I was like, oh my God, look at her, and it might have taken us 4 years to get to that, but it was just amazing that she could go in, feel comfortable, do that, and then she always lies in this doorway so she
I
can
know
see
what to do.
everybody.
I know what we
Yeah.
do here.
Literally, it was literally that. She was stood on the scales looking at me as if I've got to get weighed now, haven't I?
I love that. I love that. Cool. So let's just wrap up then. I know this is probably just like a huge question, but have you got anything, any little tips or advice or recommendations for anyone who's watching who, is in the process of adopting or who is, perhaps experiencing some challenges of their own and maybe in that space of, oh my God, what have I done?
First one is ask for help. So, find some like yourself, like your group, just say, God, this has happened, and just be honest about what's happened and how you feel about it. I
Yeah.
think sometimes it can feel quite difficult, that like that night when I was up all night with two snarling dogs, and you just kind of think, oh my God, I've caused all of this, and it's easy to try and hide what's happened maybe and feel a bit like you're letting people down.
I
Um,
think I know what comes out a lot in conversations that I have with people is they get so upset and worry so much that that they're failing, if you see what I mean. They're
yeah,
failing the dogs and in some way, which it isn't the case, especially if you're reaching out for help, because we just don't know what we don't know until we do, and
yeah,
it's not like people are deliberately taking a dog on to not knowing how to handle a particular situation that they didn't know was going to come up and they've never experienced before. But yeah, that reaching out for help can be difficult for some people, I know, but it can be invaluable in terms of being able to get on top of things quite quickly, even if it's only just from a management point of view. Definitely.
and my other big one is just hang out and spend time together. um you know they're not.
Rather than thinking about doing lots of things.
Yeah, I confess that, and that's always one of the things I feel guilty about, that I always feel like I'm not doing enough training, or I'm not doing enough of that. But actually, Womble and I have been together quite a few years now, and we have a great relationship. And that, I always say, is built on the fact that she wants to be with me. Um,
Absolutely.
and that's just from spending time together and hanging out. So we hang out in my world, the house and the cafe and stuff and places like that. And I try and hang out with her in her world. So her world is woodland and moors and streams,
Yeah.
and that's that kind of thing. So just that spending time together and not having any pressure on anything to happen, but just
No
being.
real agenda even to walk anywhere, is there? I know for you
No, I
guys,
mean,
we've
my
spoken
favorite.
about this a lot over the years,
Yeah,
haven't we? About that whole, I'm just going to stand here, hang out, look around, and
yeah. The
um,
longest short walk. I always
that's
say
it.
we're the
That's it.
specialists at long short walks. So, we can be
Absolutely.
out for an hour and a half and cover half a mile.
Yeah. I
Um,
love
you
that. I
know,
love that.
and the other thing I've kind of learned is we spend a lot of time in those woods. They're literally a 10-minute walk up the road from me. But in order to walk to them, we have to walk through along a fairly busy road.
Yeah.
So we drive. So, it's absolutely nonsense, isn't it, to get in your car to drive 2 minutes up the road to take the dogs for a walk.
Not
But
necessarily.
they arrive then at the woods, chilled, there's no triggers, they're chilled and ready to play. And obviously Sky's got her dodgy legs as well now, so she can do the maximum of her walk in a nice environment rather than taking the walk up getting there.
Yeah, love that.
So that's always really beneficial.
Yeah, I love that.
But if you have the ability to meet these dogs where they are, then they are
Yes,
the most amazing dogs.
for sure. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Joe, for coming along to chat to me about the beautiful Womble and Sky. It's been really lovely to listen to your journey with them, which I know has been very up and down, and I'm sure lots of people will be able to relate 100%. But I know that the girls, they are thriving with you, and they have a wonderful life with you, and you support them magnificently.
I hope so. I hope they
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely, you do. And, keep the videos coming because they just entertain me on a daily basis. This little girl here, she's just batshit crazy.
She is proper quirky, isn't she? She's definitely the quirkiest dog I've ever met.
She's wonderful. My tramp would love her. He'd be like, "Yeah, you're on my wavelength."
Yeah, she's a crazy creature, but
Yeah,
they've both got so much love to give. And you only have to look in those eyes, don't you, on there,
yeah,
and
absolutely. Absolutely
and
gorgeous.
like I say, you hang out with these dogs and you'd never
Anytime.
go back, I don't think.
Yeah.
They just give so much.
They are addictive, I must admit.
Yeah, and I'm the Staffordshire Bull Terrier fan. That's, I've ended up with
Yeah.
the floofiest dogs in the world that fill my house with hair.
Oh, that's a whole other conversation. Bless you. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming along to speak to me. And yeah, thank you for sharing your story about Womble and Munchkin with us all.
Thank you.